Alright, so today we're going to practice some of our shading skills, and you have 3 different objects to choose to draw. So you have an apple, a flower, and a stack of rocks to pick from, and I'm going to choose an apple to draw for my example. So when you're drawing something from observation, you want to draw slowly, and you want to try to look at all the details in the object and try to get as many of those details onto your paper. So for the apple, I'm going to start with the shape of my apple. So if I start around the top of the apple, I'm just going to draw and look at the shape as I draw. And it's kind of a circular shape, but it's a little bit different, so I'm going to try to get that shape onto my paper the best that I can. And up around the side of the apple. Okay. Alright, so I'm also going to draw in the shape of my cast shadow that is below the apple. So that kind of helps to show that the apple is sitting on a surface like a table and not just floating in midair. So I'm just going to draw the shape of my cast shadow. I'm also going to look for the stem. So I see the stem is towards the top of the apple, right about here, and it kind of slants to the right. So I'm just going to try to draw in that shape of my stem. And it's okay if there's a little bit of a line from your apple shape, you could just go back in and erase that or shade over it after. So just starting with the shape of my apple first and the shape of the shadow. Then I'm going to start with my darkest values first. So the shadows are the darkest area of your picture. So where I see the darkest areas are the shadow. So I'm going to use the side of my pencil when I'm shading instead of using the tip of it like when I'm writing, and that will help me to fill in more space, and it just makes it a lot easier to color it in. So to get the darkest values for the shadow, I'm going to apply a lot of pressure so it comes out nice and dark. I'm just going to try and color in my cast shadow over here. Okay, if you go out of the lines a little bit, that's okay. We can always clean it up with the eraser afterwards. Alright, and my shadow kind of gets cut off a little bit because of the paper. That's okay too. So I'm going to go in and make this a little bit more even. Really press down and get a nice bold shadow. Okay. I'm also going to look for the shadow on the side of the apple. So this side looks the darkest to me, so I'm going to go in with my pencil and I'm going to shade that in with lots of pressure to make sure that it comes out nice and dark. So nice bold shadow. Okay. I also see a little bit of a shadow where the stem is. Okay, so the next, also the stem itself is really dark, so I'm going to shade that in. Next, I'm going to look for the gray areas of my apple, which are called the midtones. So not quite the darkest and not quite the lightest. So I'm going to go in those areas and add a little less pressure for my midtone. So I see some grays on the top of the apple here. I'm still using the side of my pencil to shade things in. There's a little more over here. And there's some more over here on the side. You can see that my apple's starting to look a little bit more 3D. I have a little more gray or mid-tone down here. Okay, and I can always go back in here and adjust my mid-tones and my shadows later if I need to. Okay, and then the last, I'm going to look for the highlights or the lightest areas of the apple where the light is shining the brightest. So I can either leave that part of my paper white, like I did over here around the stem, or I can take my eraser and erase where I want that highlight to be. Okay, so I had the little one on the side. So now you can see that I have a shadow, a midtone, and a highlight on my apple. It's starting to look much more three-dimensional, and it's starting to look much more realistic.